You need to find a chair, my dear. Sorry to.
I can also join online.
Yeah, but it's nice if you find a chair. You are welcome. There are spaces here.
Okay.
It's better to have people in person. So we would prefer to have you in person. Supposed to be a 16 people room, so there's space for at least 2 more chairs. I'm not sure. But if we are live, so whenever you want to start.
Do you want to do the first introduction?
I just want to announce that we are kicking up with this event, the Geneva Toxic, the 25th Geneva Toxic Free Talks edition, that we are very happy to have the special talk with us, and it's his last edition of the talks because you are soon going to end your mandate. So we are again very honored to have you here, and we look forward to unpack your current report to the council, but also many other reports that you have been delivering to the UNGA and to the council during these events. And with that, I hand over to Yves Lador, the Geneva representative of Earth Justice. He's going to moderate the event.
Thank you very much, Diana, and welcome to the people who are joining us here in the room and those who are online. And indeed, it's really a pleasure to have with us the Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights, Marcos Orellana, who presented his report to the Human Rights Council yesterday. One of the elements which is quite interesting, the element on which the report is focusing is the access to justice in the field of toxics. And we had the opportunity to hear at his own side event on the report and at the interactive dialogue in the council with states, intergovernmental organizations and NGOs, how it illustrates the link between human rights and toxics, and how indeed you need to have an evolution in the way we deal with human rights issues in the classical way in order to make sure that these standards in the field of human rights do protect the people when they are facing toxic issues. But the thing we would like to focus on now is how does this really have an impact on the ground? And precisely if this report on access to justice is so important is that throughout all of the years of the mandate of the Special Rapporteur and also from the experience of his predecessors, we've been able to see how such a mandate can help people on the ground, help to develop responses to different situations. And that was the basis for the elaboration of that report. So we look forward in this discussion today to see how we can harness some experience out of these examples of situations and responses which have been developed from what is happening on the ground. So I'll start first by giving the floor to the Special Rapporteur, Marcos Orellana. Marcos, thank you very much for being with us. It was already a very heavy day yesterday. Today will be also an important day with a number of events, so we're really very happy to have you with us for this talk. And as I said, to harness the experience that has been gained through your mandate in dealing with situations directly on the ground. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Yves. It's a real pleasure for me to once again join you in the Geneva Toxic Free Talks. I want to start by thanking the Geneva Environment Network once again for partnering in the organization of these talks this year, and Earth Justice that for now a good number of years we've already organized these talks every year with your vision, Yves, and looking at these issues in depth, issues that concern toxics and human rights. Today's program, I want to make one introductory comment before we jump into the discussion, and it is that the United Nations is it's a huge entity organization, and it's often seen by many at least, disconnected from the experiences of people on the ground. It's seen as a constellation of abstractions. It's a phrase I sometimes use. And the challenge to connect with the ground is certainly hard. And that's where the UN Human Rights Council, one of the elements and tools that it has at its disposal that it has created for this purpose is the special procedure mandate holders to connect with reality. Special procedures are able to go to ground level and hear from communities, from individuals, from groups, from victims themselves. This brings the UN closer to the people of the world, and that is important. Now, it's hard to do, and so a discussion on the how, on modalities, and so I'm very pleased to hear about work with clinics. In my tenure in the mandate, I've experimented also with amicus curiae briefs. I've done exploratory visits, partnered with academic institutions and done academic visits, among various other tools. And so very pleased to have the opportunity to get further in depth of what it means to tackle toxics on the ground. Thank you, Yves.
Thank you very much, Marcus. So we'll turn now directly to the different experiences we can have. And I'm very happy to start with Natalie Seleova. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Great. Thank you, Natalie, for being with us. You're with the Chemical and Waste Youth Platform, quite an important group of young people who came together and to work on these issues. There's not a lot of people usually getting mobilized on chemicals and waste and toxics. So it's really great to have you with us. And we're really interested to see, how do you see on your side, coming from the youth, and which will have a lot to do with to deal with the legacy, unfortunately, of toxics and chemical, how you do see these responses to situation? And for example, how do you see the importance of a mandate like the mandate of the Special Rapporteur?
Thank you for the floor. Good morning, everyone. I want to sincerely thank you for inviting me and having me here. It's my first talk like this, so I hope it goes well.
It will, sure.
Thank you so much. I don't know if everyone is familiar with the youth platform, but it's the biggest youth-led organization on chemicals. And me personally, I'm still a student. I am not involved in any of government activities yet. Hopefully in December. But my study started at Resetox, which is a research center located in Brno, in the Czech Republic. And I'm currently also studying environmental policy and law in Finland. So I wanted to undertake the perspective of a scientist, but also the perspective of a lawmaker. And since my background is in research, I would like to start from a different angle than from maybe the report is focused on law. So I would like to, sorry, I'll get lost. So my studies have given me a lot of different angles and perspectives on how to look at the issues tackling toxics on the ground. And quite early on, I got familiar with the fact that we are exposed to pollution everywhere we go. But for example, we spend 90% of the time indoors. So while we always talk about pollution outside, indoor pollution is very serious. So we are surrounded by PFAS, brominated flame retardants, and other substances that are mostly very dangerous in spaces like this, where it's a lot of electronics. And we don't quite realize that. And young children particularly are a very vulnerable group, as they crawl on the ground, they lick everything, and they put everything in their mouth. And these chemicals affect their neurodevelopment, their immune system, their endocrine system. And what is often not talked about is that many, while here in Europe, we have many regulations for newly produced toys, for example. Many toys are produced from recycled plastics, which is not tested for the chemicals that they contain. So, for example, if we have a plastic toy made from scraps of a notebook, it contains a huge amount of chemicals that should not be there. And about soil, air, and water pollution, I think I don't need to explain further. And although here in Europe we have excellent regulations, also on other places in the world, we still eat one plastic card a day, a week, or something like that. So we cannot escape from pollution. So in this regard, I realized that it's not given that the outcomes of research focusing on these issues are that alarming, are transformed to policy and put enough pressure on policymakers and lawmakers to provide strict regulations or just maybe guidance for people to know how to behave. They cannot escape the pollution, but they can maybe alter their behavior somehow to limit it or minimize it. But they are often unaware of any kind of dangers that they're surrounded by. So when I started my master's in Finland, focusing on environmental law, I realized how disconnected the law and policymaking is from these studies. And I believe this misalignment is on both parts, both the scientists' part and the policymaker part, in a way that scientists often fear to talk about their research because they're focused on very profound wording and accuracy, which is often very hard to translate to other normal people or policymakers. And on the other hand, policymakers are often feared of scientists that they're odd creatures that they will not understand. So the fear is on both sides. But I believe, and also not just me, but the whole environment and on chemicals knows that the scientific background is very important. And currently, the new science policy panel on chemicals that was adopted in June may be a promising step to the direction. But it also lacks a significant, maybe policy, like decision-making power, in the sense that it's only an advisory body. In the sense, I think that it is nice maybe to draw example of the Montreal Protocol, which is deemed as the most successful international convention ever. And one of the reasons that is the high involvement of scientists in this process. And they brought not only new substances that could be substituted, but also new processes and technologies. And I think this is something that we should focus on to involve more science policy communication in the decision-making process. But it is also important to provide some practical solutions. And the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform has launched a project that is called Pollution Solutions Lab, which was done during the BRS talk. And it's a collecting global database and a map of youth-led initiatives that are tackling toxic pollution across the globe and demonstrate how young people are not only victims of chemical exposure, but also investigators, innovators, and solution builders. And our hope is that this will also connect and inspire more young people to engage. And I personally know people from my school who developed many interesting innovations, and they could be transformed or adapted into more like solutions, like a global scale solutions. So a few examples that I can draw on is the team from Ireland developed a magnet-based method to remove microplastics from water. Our university student from Kenya has turned her experience with severe asthma into a multi-city air pollution monitoring initiative and installed over 50 sensors in Uganda that help to monitor the air situation and help the local policymakers. And the first ever youth-led chemical pollution organizer in Syria coordinated nearly 100 volunteers to lead waste management trainings and communities in her country. And also my friend, for example, founded an initiative that cleared 50 tons of plastics from over 60 countries in the world. So youth has really a lot of potential that they can bring. And it would be wonderful if they would be more involved in the decision-making process and consulted, and their innovations or views would be taken into account, as we will be the ones who will stay here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you to you. You really confirmed that it was a good idea to start with the youth groups, because this is a very, very interesting response. Talking about responses, that is really a very interesting way to respond. Let me ask the Special Rapporteur if you would like to do a comment before I get to the next example we want to talk about.
Well, if you give me the word, I'll take it.
I was sure.
Offer a couple of reactions. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing your insights. One of them is that I think that if at some point youth and students were told to grow up, and at some point the future will be yours, and at this time it's for you to study and prepare. Well, sure, there's a lot of studying and preparation, but as we've seen with the recent advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on obligations of states in the context of climate change, this was led by a group of students. It was an initiative that was born out of students, and so it is youth that will be living for the most part of their lives with the toxic legacies of previous generations, and so your voice on the table is very, very important. That's one. And second, what you were pointing to, scientists being afraid to speak. I mentioned and elaborate on some of that in my report on the right to science. This was my first report to the Human Rights Council back in 2021, so an enabling environment for scientists without fear of reprisals or attacks. Unfortunately, we've seen perhaps a trend or even concerted attacks against scientists who speak out. And so it's not only the fear of being seen as political or losing credibility because they're engaging in policy debates. That was a big concern previously, but now it's concern for their personal integrity, because there are organized groups that will go after climate deniers and others that will go after scientists in a very direct way. And so there's also corporate capture and conflicts of interest that we could speak about, but I thought I'd highlight that the fear to speak is unfortunately possibly even widening the gap that you spoke of between law and measures to deal with the reality of the toxic challenges and our knowledge of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcos, and thank you, Nathalie, for your contribution. It was really a great way to open this discussion. And now in the next example, we will stay in touch with youth involvement, but this time in a different context. So let me turn to you, Sara Davila. You are leading the International Human Rights Clinic at the UIC Law University. You'll have to give me the details. I see that I'm a bit lost in the acronyms, so I'll ask you to enlighten me on this. But you have been leading a number of cases, working on cases with students, and you've been working precisely with the Special Rapporteur on some of these issues. So we're really eager to hear about your experience in developing responses on situation on the ground.
Thank you. So good morning. Thank you for having us here. I am here with a team of students. So this opening sort of this conversation with the involvement of youth is exactly what we do at the International Human Rights Clinic. I am a professor at the law school at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Law and director of the International Human Rights Clinic. And I want to thank you, Mr. Tado and Dr. Orellana for having us here today in the Geneva Toxics Free Talks to discuss our work with the mandate and supporting the mandate. So today I'm here with Shahed Jaber and Shunard Shimniak, my two students this semester. And I will share some reflections of the collaborative relationship that we have had in supporting the mandate on toxics and human rights in relation to SUMEB Namibia. So around 2 years ago, Dr. Orellana and I spoke about this collaborative effort, and it led to an important clinic project and learning opportunity for student clinicians at the clinic. My students will share the work of the clinic from the student clinician perspective as they train to be human rights advocates. And then I will share the clinic's collaboration with the mandate as a modality of work supporting it.
So thank you for having us today. My colleague and I are student clinicians at the International Human Rights Clinic at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Law. We're a non-profit, nonpartisan legal club that's dedicated to the protection of human rights both in the United States and around the world. Our clinic allows us as student clinicians to directly engage in human rights advocacy under the supervision of faculty at the domestic and international levels. And our work consists of investigating, reporting, and engaging in advocacy to protect vulnerable communities, promoting human rights and documenting human rights violations in the United States and abroad, collaborating with other human rights organizations on cases and projects, and publishing and presenting reports and other materials related to the protection of human rights.
And as Shunard was saying, the clinic allows for one-on-one client representation as well as projects looking at systemic change as well. Our work can encompass a wide range of human rights work, from legal literacy campaigns to documenting human rights abuses and writing reports to educate judiciaries. There's both the opportunity to go to national courts representing immigrants and asylum seekers, as well as international human rights courts or bodies such as the UN or the Inter-American System, for example. We also conduct research on issues such as vulnerable populations, human rights defenders, and environmental rights. What makes it truly unique and immersive is the training that we receive as student clinicians. We center the client in everything that we do, and we work to build skills in trauma-informed lawyering, understanding the implications of legal ethics in the public interest sector, and conducting fact-finding investigations, just to name a few. Thus, overall seeking to narrow the access to justice gap for those that are most marginalized. Thank you.
So thank you both for sharing the work that student clinicians do in the clinic. So the International Human Rights Clinic works on various functions of human rights work. In this situation regarding SUMEB Namibia, the clinic engaged in fact-finding, including gathering evidence and testimonies from directly impacted persons during our field work in Namibia, worked with environmental and public health experts, received valuable information from extractive industry experts, and engaged with members of civil society in Namibia. This work was performed on a multidisciplinary basis with members of our team representing the legal, medical, and public health fields. Our legal work was informed by a medical and public health focus as we engaged in every step of the way. In this manner, this multidisciplinary team was able to establish the links between the environmentally hazardous practices, exposure to toxic materials and hazardous waste, and the environmental and health crisis in Sumev, Namibia, as violations of human rights. Our work supporting the mandate was able to establish the credibility of the allegations of human rights abuses received by the UN Special Rapporteur and support the situation to move forward from initial allegations to the resulting communications sent by the mandate to various countries and corporations responsible for this crisis. Our work as a clinic served as a connector between directly impacted communities whose human rights have been violated with the UN procedures and specifically the mandate on toxics and human rights. This point of connection was critical and is especially critical in cases where communities who have been historically marginalized and invisible to participatory processes are disproportionately affected by environmental harm and the resulting human rights violations, and continue to experience obstacles in bringing their claims forward. As we discuss the importance of access to justice and effective remedies in the rapporteur's last report, the Orellana Guidelines, it is important to think about the UN mandates, such as the mandate on toxics and human rights, and how it can continue to work closely with civil society, including clinics, as a way to narrow the access to justice gap and facilitate the protection of procedural and substantive environmental human rights. This collaborative experience resulted in student clinicians training to become human rights advocates, and communities being able to access and navigate UN processes, and increase the capacity of the mandate to continue its investigative work in human rights situations, needing a team to provide technical expertise from on the ground. Finally, this collaborative work resulted in the Special Rapporteur, Dr. Orellana, with the support of the environment and water mandates, as well as the working group on the issue of human rights and transnational corporations and other business enterprises, and sending letters to Namibia, China, Canada, and the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, and the corporations Dundee Precious Metals, Sumev, and Weatherly International, bringing attention to allegations of human rights abuses against workers and community members in the context of extractive industries in Sumev, Namibia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you also to both of you for your presentation. What is quite interesting is we don't have that many opportunities to, open the box and see how does it works behind the reports and behind the mechanisms we hear about. And it's quite interesting to see that you can have involvement from the youth. Very often we feel ourselves so disempowered at all ages, not just as youth. I can unfortunately testify this. So we have this feeling. But what is very interesting that in the way that you have described this whole, I would say, machinery, which is rather light, but still does need quite a clear articulation. It does give a possibility to act on issues which seem so wide when we talk about transnational cooperation, when we talk about the scale of the impacts, and when we're talking here about a country which is pretty far away from Chicago, and on which you do have directly an impact. And I think this is a very, very interesting description of precisely what a UN mechanisms, and especially in the field of human rights, can bring and make these connections between international law, between international actors, and what's really happening on the ground. So I really thank you for this presentation, because we really need to look at this a bit more closely, especially at a time where multilateralism or intergovernmental organizations are so much under scrutiny, to say the least, and even sometimes very hardly criticized. We see how a lot of these critiques are totally unfounded and do not reflect the reality of the work which can be achieved thanks to these type of mechanism. So Marcos, again, here I'll turn to you to have a comment on the elements. How did you feel to have this clinic this law clinic helping you? What are the other examples where you also had the impression that you were able to work with a number of partners in allegation letters or in this type of process, which is a very important part of your work?
Thank you, Yves. And I could start, I wish to start first of all by thanking Professor Davila for being here today and for the support that her clinic has provided the mandate over now a couple of years of work. And perhaps this is a place to start. The mandate on toxics and human rights, like other special procedure mandate holders, special procedures of the Human Rights Council, is a monitoring and reporting mandate. And communications are one of the tools that mandate holders employ to carry out this task. But what is probably not sufficiently appreciated or apprehended is that these communications take a significant amount of time to prepare. And that is one element of that is because of the due diligence that goes into fact finding, of making sure that the allegations are credible and grounded in reality. Communications serve very important roles of visibility and documentation in human rights matters. But again, preparing them is resource intensive, and the resources available to special procedures and to I'll speak to the toxics and human rights mandate specifically, are limited. And so the possibility, the opportunity to collaborate with specialized human rights clinics that can carry out analysis, interview victims, go to the field, carry out fact finding, so do what a proper due diligence and frame issues in a human rights language is something that is invaluable, I should say. One last point is that given the sensitive nature of the information that is revealed through this process, one of the modalities of work has involved, what do we call them? Confidentiality agreements or non-disclosure. So ways to make sure that the information is not revealed. This is not only to comport with the code of conduct that binds the conduct of special procedures, but more broadly for the protection of sources, the protection of victims, and so the integrity of the mechanisms. I have had the opportunity during my tenure in the mandate to work with a number of clinics from law schools in various countries of the world. And I will say that this is I consider it a good practice in order to enhance the resource base available to the mandate, but also for the educational opportunities of students that are able to see the law in action. And so I'm very grateful again, Sarah, for you being here and for the engagement over the last couple of years.
Thank you very much. I still have a question, Marcos. How do you evaluate the impact of this action, particularly the one that has been presented, without revealing what you cannot reveal, as you just said before? But still, I mean, we're very interested to see where are we in this case right now.
Well, the letters have been the letters that Sarah described that I sent along with a couple other special procedures to several member states and companies have been made public. And so that by itself, I would say, is an important element of impact in terms of visibility. Now, I think time will tell in terms of how the actors position themselves in regards to the specific allegations made. Some of the member states have replied. Others, I'm hoping to receive a reply. And so the process is ongoing. It's, I would say, early still to make an assessment of how things are going. But given the information already received and what we're seeing from the ground, there seems to be movement. to address the grave allegations that are made in these letters in connection with exposure of workers and the community in connection with the operation of the smelter in Tsumeb, Namibia.
Okay, great. And in your experience, companies do react to when you address to them?
It's a mixed bag, I would say. And so, for example, I've sent a number of letters to companies, and I think it is quite important for this. What was at the time an innovation, now it looks like a normal thing, but let's recall the human rights system was premised and is still premised on human rights obligations of states, but that is not to exclude human rights responsibilities of countries. And so applying the communications tool for accountability of companies in regards to human rights abuses. I will say it's a mixed bag in the sense that some companies take these procedures very seriously and there's a dialogue and engagement. Others, not so much. So I think it depends. I've sent letters, for example, to oil companies in connection with divestment in Nigeria without adequate regard to accountability, cleanup of the legacy pollution in the Niger Delta. The officials from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights are present, so you may help me. But I don't think we have received a reply from Shell or ExxonMobil, and so let's recall that in another case, Chevron Texaco was involved in litigation with Ecuador in similar situations in the Amazon rainforest and had promised to fight this until hell freezes over and then continue to fight it on the ice, if you recall those metaphors. This is to say that there are some companies or companies in certain sectors that are not quite amenable to engaging in good faith or in any way with these procedures. But there are many others that take the UN guiding principles on business and human rights seriously, that take their human rights responsibilities as established by human rights standards internationally seriously, and their communications can serve to open a door for dialogue. I have seen that happen in a number of cases in Sweden, in Ecuador that I mentioned, and elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you. So a number of these procedures do constitute responses to situation on the ground. So that's quite interesting to hear. So let's turn now to our last contributor, Jitendra Sharma. You're with us online. Thank you very much for joining us. You're working at UNEP Chemicals, UNEP standing for the United Nations Environmental Programme. And if I'm right, you're working precisely with what we call the GEF team, which is the Global Environmental Fund. Corrects my designation of the different bodies. I sometimes make mistakes. So GEF is known as a very, very important tool in the field of environment. That's where the resources are in order to get things moving. After what you heard about trying to develop responses to situation on the ground, how do you in UNEP, on the basis of your experience and also the work you do with Jeff, how do you see this response being developed in your own field? And how different would these type of response be compared to the way you've heard a special rapporteur proceeds? So the floor is yours. And once again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for giving this opportunity to me, and apologies I could not join in person. But yes, it's interesting discussion, and I can also give a little of brief of how Jeff is supporting these aspects and what are the entry points or opportunities for us in future. So the Jeff is actually a financial mechanism for certain multilateral environmental agreements. For chemicals and waste, it's particularly supporting the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, Minamata Convention on Mercury, and then it also supports Montreal Protocol and a little bit support on the Global Framework on Chemicals, which which encompasses the whole framework on chemical management. How it works is through three strategic objectives. One is creating enabling conditions which can, so all the GEF projects which we develop and implement in countries focuses on majorly three elements so far, which is enabling conditions, which includes awareness, capacity building, technical assistance, and regulation. Then we have elimination of hazardous legacy chemicals, which is some sort of disposal activities of stockpiles. And then the third objective is prevention of the buildup of hazardous chemicals in the environment, which we do it through the project activities, and we design activities in a way that, for example, you promote an alternative towards against a hazardous chemical which is already being used. And I'll give you an example of, for example, DDT was widely used for malaria control as well as as a pesticide use, and it is almost eradicated. This is due to the joint effort of various actors, including the Stockholm Convention, then the JEF investment, as well as countries also identified that there are alternatives available. So DDT is more or less now uh, eradicated from use, with a little bit of use still allowed because of, by the convention, but countries are using it to a very minimum amount. Now, coming up to the very interesting discussions I was hearing from Natalie and everyone, I think it's also important that from the human rights perspective, I think the access to knowledge is one of the important tool for human right. And from my experience, and I'm working in this field of Stockholm Convention for now 17, 18 years, and my experience is that people do not know what they are dealing with. And I'll give you probably a couple of examples. One is from the start of my professional career many years ago, that when we were doing inventory of contaminated site and we went to the sites which has transformers containing this PCBs, which is a persistent organic pollutant called polychlorinated biphenyls, and the workers are just using it with bare hands, using PCB oil as an ointment for a joint pain relief. You will see a lot of report that people think that something coming from, especially in developing countries, coming from electrical transformer will bring some sort of magic solution to joint pain and all. So they did not know what it is. Even their managers did not know. For the managers, it is a trade name of a transformer oil, which is very useful for them to make sure that there is energy security, until we told them that this is one of the chemicals which is banned or prohibited and has to be phased out. So knowledge is very important, and this is what the JEF always has, a communication angle in it. The other example I'll give you is from my recent experience on firefighting foams. So firefighting foams, a lot of firefighting foams uses PFAS or PFAS related chemicals. For a firefighter to know whether it contains PFAS or not, it's very important, because there are convention obligations, but as well as there is now information available that these chemicals are harmful, and there is a direct contact, because especially firefighting foam in an emergency situation is an open application. So it is not only affecting the firefighters, but it is also affecting the whole population living nearby, because this is a water soluble compound and can go into surface runoff and contaminate your water. We read report every day on forever chemicals, some sort of those things everywhere across the world. So the knowledge and information is very important. So what we do through JEF is, one is eliminate wherever we have mandate to eliminate certain stockpiles of this, and then we prevent the future buildup. So with our projects, we will make sure that wherever we have interventions to be made, we create conditions and help the users of those chemicals to switch to alternatives which are safer and does not contain PFAS or fluorine free foam, for example. uh, and there is a clear angle of linkage between the knowledge, human rights, and prevention of buildup of these chemicals. These are a couple of examples from the real work, and what Natalie was saying about, yeah, of course, we are surrounded by chemicals. We just don't know what it contains. The Stockholm Convention is listing new chemicals every alternate year, and now we have to work more on sectoral aspects. We have a big program on electronics management. So definitely the informal workers who are the backbone of circular economy are actually probably most of the recyclers are troubling their health without knowing what they are going into. So this information and knowledge is very important while we help them transition into more formalized um, uh, and more safe environment. And also bringing this knowledge, we have to also tell the producers and who are responsible for bringing these products into the world to switch to the alternatives, and we stop using those things at the upstream level, because we do a lot of work on downstream on waste management, but we have to start thinking of working on upstream. And that is where the Jeff is now working on pollution free supply chain to work at upstream level to slowly transition from using these hazardous chemicals to non or less hazardous or non-hazardous chemicals. We will have new knowledge every day. So that is something which Jeff is working on from this point of view. So we would be happy to work on this. And the other thing is we are also integrating in our projects. So earlier there was a requirement of certainly you have to make sure that the environment and social safeguard elements have to be there. So we are integrating more on the social safeguard and human rights angle in our projects, including the gender considerations and all. And that is what something which we would be working on the Jeff projects. But yes, I am happy to answer more questions, and we have many examples.
Thank you very much. This is really very, very interesting. And we see a very different approach from the one we just heard coming from a human rights angle. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's important for all of those who are listening to this discussion to be aware that you work with countries. You don't work directly with people. So people can address themselves, as we saw with the example of the law clinic, to the special rapporteur. If I'm correct, people cannot directly address requests or issues directly to the Jeff. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, we work through the countries. So our main focal point in the countries is Jeff operational focal point. So every country nominates an operational focal point, and the projects we implement in countries is with the executing agencies nominated by the Jeff operational focal point of each country. We also have global and regional projects where we work with global and regional partners, where there are experts who are involved in providing guidance and information, because there is we work in developing countries. Not every country have all the information or expertise, so we bring these partners together to work on our project. But certainly our first kind of point of contact is the country representative, which is nominated by one of the operational focal points.
But then thank you very much for this answer. I would have a second question, which is, has there been before, or should we envisage some kind of a connection between the work that you are doing on your side, because also you're doing at a larger scale when you're doing with a country in a country, for example, eliminating a legacy, that would be for on a wider scale than just one hotspot. And requests or elements which can be brought from the field or directly through the special rapporteur. And I'll turn afterwards, after your answer, Jitendra, I'll turn also to the special rapporteur for his part of the answer.
No, certainly. Also, this is what is very, very important in terms of communication also, and sharing the information, and probably the guidance from the special rapporteur can also feed into our projects, because there are certain investigation results which the special rapporteur normally reports can be used in developing the new projects and identifying there are key risks to be integrated into project, and we can design certain elements in our projects in future or in existing projects to bring some entry points to make sure that there are elements which we don't miss without kind of compromising with the project overall objective. So there is definitely, I think normally when we develop projects, wherever we read these reports, we refer to them depending on, especially in program when we develop, we refer to those reports, but I think there could be much more close collaboration and entry points.
Thank you very much, Jitendra. Mr. Special Rapporteur.
Thanks, Eve, and thanks so much for the presentation. So a couple of reactions. I also have a couple of questions, but let me start saying first echoing the point that was just made, that the GEF serves as a financial mechanism for several multilateral environmental agreements in the chemicals and waste cluster, and also in the environment more generally. I mentioned that because I'll come back to that. And I want to highlight this because we shouldn't underestimate the impact and importance that the GEF as a financial mechanism can have with projects on the ground. In my recent country visits to Samoa and the Dominican Republic, the impact of the GEF Islands project, for example, is very, very important. So I thought I'd start there. A second comment that I thought I'd pick up on what was said on waste pickers is on just transition. In my country visit to Paraguay, I made the point of meeting with people that work on the informal recycling there were waste dumps, and people were incredibly grateful for the opportunity, because they were saying the government will never meet with us, and here comes the UN representative, as they see it, to listen to us. And that was a very big moment for them. It is also a big moment for the mandate to, as we were talking, come to the ground and connect with people. And in the context of just transition, now that we're talking about plastic pollution, what does the transition to having social security, having a safe work environment, and so tools and so forth, and all of this in the waste pickers and waste management is very important. So very pleased to hear you speak about that. Third, in the consultations that I've had on my thematic reports, on some of them at least, representatives from GEF have also contributed, and that has been very important. And so now to the point that you raised, Yves, I understand that the GEF also has a system of safeguards and a grievance mechanism modeled after the World Bank's inspection panel. Mutatis mutandis, there are differences. But so, thinking out loud here, maybe there's a way, or there's an opening, or there's an opportunity to consider synergies there. So a couple of questions. The level of funding for chemicals and wastes in comparison with other dimensions of environmental policy making, is it adequate? What do you think? I think we know the answer, but I very much value your opinion. Secondly, I was following GEF 8, so this was the last replenishment, closely. And one of the things that came out of that, and please correct me if you feel that this is different, is the need for integrated fundings to overcome siloed funding. And so previously it was convention by convention, now projects trying to capture synergies between sectors. Has that worked? Hasn't it worked? And then lastly, what can we expect for GEF 9 coming up next year?
Jitendra, before you answer to these questions, I would like to turn to the room to know if there were other questions. We're getting close to the end of our hour, so I would like to give an opportunity to people in the room, or perhaps if our people from the Gen team would see also questions coming up from the chat. But there is a question in the room, so please.
Yeah, I hope everyone will forgive me for picking legal academics' brains about a legal question, but I think that the project you were talking about helps, make a lot of connections for me about how clinics can work with special mandate holders. I just was wondering about whether there's consideration, or what your thoughts are, I guess, broadly about the relationship between using communications and litigation against corporate offenders or corporate human rights violators. Is it easier, or is it evidentially or procedurally better to start with something less procedurally adversarial than just going straight to litigation? Or is it like maybe there's a practical consideration like you at the clinic don't have, like the local lawyer or whatever, and then maybe to do that sort of thing? Like, was there any consideration of that? How do you think about that question?
Okay, another question.
Yes, thank you. Geneva from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I have a question on Jeff, which was like when you work with country, I guess advising country authorities, etc. I would be interested to know if you ever look into the recommendation of the special rapporteur. I mean, in this case, Toxic Monday, but could be others because they conduct country visits. They provide a quite detailed recommendation to the country. So I was wondering if that happens, is there could be scope for collaborating. Thank you.
The final one. It will be read the last one.
Pascal Marat from The Optimist. I would like to understand how you can create scale for the legal challenges that you are seeing. It links to the standing point that the Special Rapporteur reports was making. How do you move from an individual issue to an issue that has scale enough to be addressed? And what is the role, if any, of civil societies in that?
Well, we saw already the link between the Special Rapporteur and the Jeff, for example, projects. That can be one element of the answer. So I'll give the floor to you, Jitendra, then Sarah, then Marcos for a final word. We have 3 minutes left only, so I will ask you to 1 minute each. It's very unfair, but that's what time is.
Yes.
So
I can be fairly quick. The funding is never adequate, but at the same time there are challenges and implementation. So there is funding, but there are not enough. Countries talk about projects during big meetings, but after that they get silent. So I think they need to also step up a little bit in terms of coming with ideas and problems with that. Normally, as a Jeff agency, we tell countries that what you should do. Sometimes countries should also come with those ideas. So I think we have to work collaboratively with them. Jeff 8 was 800 million, Jeff 7 was around 600 million. So there was an increase from Jeff 7 to Jeff 8. Jeff 9, we don't know yet. The replenishment meetings have just started. So we hope that there will be, we don't know yet. I can't answer that at this time, but because we are still waiting, the replenishment have not discussed the funding so far as I know. And the last point is on the recommendations from the human rights report. So it depends on project to project. It also depends on who is developing project, but I think this is a point to be taken on board, that we should be looking at those recommendations when we work in countries where there are already recommendations on these aspects. But it's very project specific, as well as also who is developing it and how deep they want to go into certain aspects. So, and also, like, there are several Jeff agencies. So every agency has their own environment and social safeguard policy which they have to follow, and some policies might be asking to enter this. But there are opportunities for synergy if it is not adequately addressed, as I said. So I think we should be looking into it more closely. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Professor Davila?
Thank you. So to answer the question about how do we choose between strategic litigation and participating with the special procedures, I think it depends how we arrive to the case. What challenges are on the ground that perhaps have not allowed for litigation at the domestic level, and therefore the communications can be a tool of establishing credibility of the human rights allegations to begin with, so that in the future it opens the door for that future litigation. In other situations, the reverse is true, that litigation has happened on the ground, but they have faced barriers of access to justice, and perhaps they have not been able to exhaust domestic remedies, and therefore the communications can serve as an additional platform to continue sort of seeking deeper into the issues of accountability.
Thank you very much. Special Rapporteur, last concluding word is yours.
Thank you. So on the question of scale, I think that's where thematic reports as a tool can integrate the work on various individual cases, seeing trends and patterns. And I think that very clearly shows in my most recent report on access to justice and effective remedies in the context of toxics. Other than that, I wish to once again thank all presenters for engaging with the mandate, thank the questions, and highlight how this is one of the key issues for the mandate, to connect with people on the ground. And so our ability, my ability, and other special procedure mandate holders to do that rests on partnerships and collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. And I'll give the final word to the Geneva Environmental Network. But please join me in thanking the speakers we had for this talk. It was really a very great talk. So thank you very much.
A great talk. Thank you to all. We are all in a rush because the next talk is in less than half a minute in another building, and we are also going to stream that one. There's another. It's only on YouTube because it's an official side event to the Human Rights Council for who is joining us online. For those who are here, you are welcome to join us in room 7 or building 8. So that's where we are going to run. And after that one, there's another one in room Concordia 5 of building 8. And then we are back here for the 4th and last talk of this year's edition of the talks, here in the same room at 4 p.m. So we look forward to have you back here again later and throughout the day. And thank you to all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But we can walk.
We can walk. We don't need to run. We can walk.
Yeah.